Thoughts about the afterlife. Chapter 8. Matthew chapter 25. God is judging between the fat and the lean. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus gives a lengthy discourse on what might appear to be the afterlife, judgment, sheep, goats, the needy and so on. What he spoke of is making sure we pay attention to the seemingly unimportant details, the lowly and needy things in others' lives, and in ours for that matter. Then a time comes for judgment. Although if the honest inquirer grows to a place of adequate perception, then they'll find that this judgment isn't relegated only to the afterlife. It's an ongoing process. It isn't targeting only those that they've been conditioned to think of as wicked sinners, but involves each and every one of mankind.
Matthew 25, verse 31. The Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels, and he will separate one from another.
Its context here in Matthew chapter 25 has nothing to do with proving the existence of a place in the afterlife called hell. Nothing. The key to a prophetic passage of scripture like this is to avoid getting trapped inside inappropriate metaphors. By learning to be alert to long-established misuse of the various analogies, we can give those traditions of man a wide berth, and not simply buy into what is nothing more than distraction and sleight of hand. One form of distraction that I've noticed is when the preacher holds up the Bible and says, "Here it is in black and white. Go home and check it, to see if I'm correct." That creates a sense of safety which is false. For the next part of the trick is the sleight of hand, which is when he might jump imperceptibly to a second passage that has a different context, but read it as if it is part of the first. This is what I perceive as stitching together unconnected verses to construct a new idea, which sounds well researched, but which is in fact misleading. It's hard to spot, especially when the preacher has a smooth silk parlance. The way Christ sets us free from self is by this process of the Son of Man judging us. That is, separating and dividing asunder what's inside. Separating the good from the bad. The sheep elements in us from the goat components.
Matthew 25, verse 32. He will separate one from another, like a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats.
The verses from 35 to 45 describe the actual context here. It's the need for us to be taking care of the small and lowly things, which we're told are the very things that point to Christ. There's no discussion about believer or non-believer.
Matthew 25, verse 35 and 36. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I had no clothing, and you gave me something to wear. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.
God yearns that we perceive His prophetic word. I think Jesus must have been making reference here to Ezekiel chapter 34, describing the work of separating and judging that He is doing in His people, in particular highlighting how we advance our own self-interest at the expense of others.
Ezekiel 34, verse 17. As for you, my sheep, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am judging between one sheep and another. Verse 20. I myself judge between the fat sheep and the lean sheep. Verse 21. You push with your side and your shoulder, and thrust your horns at all the weak sheep, until you scatter them abroad. Verse 22. So I have saved my sheep, and they are no longer prey. I have judged between one sheep and another. Verse 25. I have removed the evil beasts from the land.
The judging process results in the flesh nature, the beasts, being separated and exterminated, so they are hopefully less and less noticeable in us. It's about this tendency we all have to trample on others' lives without regard. And of course remaining that way without changing has a consequence. In the light of Ezekiel chapter 34, Jesus was trying to impress on the Pharisees the need for the privileged not to trample all over the poor.
Ezekiel 34, verse 18. Is it not enough for you to feed on the good pasture, that you must trample the rest of your pastures with your feet? When you drink clean water, must you muddy the rest of the water by trampling it with your feet? Verse 19. As for my sheep, they must eat what you trampled with your feet, and drink what you have muddied with your feet.
I can't help noticing that the prophetic imagery here in Ezekiel chapter 34 reverberates ancient echoes and overtones of Matthew chapter 25. And what's more, the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. These are all urgent prophetic messages about how we need to take care of the fate of the lean, and reject that sense of entitlement that the fat may lay claim to. This is not only at the level of other people, but perhaps even more importantly, a process we work through at a personal level, within ourselves. These passages of Scripture are significant prophetically, in the sense that they beckon us to hear the voice of God, enlightening us about what He wants, about how He wants to see us respond to His word. What is prophetic has become yet another of those clichés stitched onto a fanciful end-times timeline. That is nothing but folly.